The rain came down hard that November evening in Chicago, drumming against the tall windows of the Skyview Grand Hotel like an insistent visitor who wouldn't be turned away. Inside the gleaming lobby, beneath crystal chandeliers that had witnessed decades of the city's finest moments, a different kind of storm was about to begin. Keisha Monroe had worked the front desk for 6 years. She was a quiet woman in her late 30s, the kind of person who moved through life without demanding attention or special treatment. Her hands were steady as she typed guest information into the computer, her voice warm when she greeted travelers, her smile genuine even after 12-hour shifts. She wore her dark hair pulled back in a simple bun, and her uniform was always perfectly pressed, even though she ironed it herself every morning before taking 2 buses to work. "Next guest, please," she called softly, looking up from her screen. The man who approached was tall, with broad shoulders and an athletic build that suggested a lifetime of physical discipline. He wore jeans and a simple jacket, carrying a single rolling suitcase. Water droplets clung to his shoulders from the brief walk from the taxi to the entrance. His face was familiar in the way that certain faces are, like you'd seen him somewhere before but couldn't quite place where. "Good evening," he said, his voice deep and kind. "I'd like to check in, please." "Of course, sir. Welcome to the Skyview Grand." Keisha's fingers moved across the keyboard. "May I have the name on your reservation?" "Jordan, Michael Jordan." Keisha nodded, typing carefully. Her brow furrowed slightly as she scanned the screen, then scanned it again. She felt a small flutter of anxiety in her chest, the kind that came when things didn't line up the way they should. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Jordan, but I don't see a reservation under that name." She kept her voice professional, though inside she was already running through the mental checklist of what to do when this happened. "Do you have a confirmation number I could look up?" Michael patted his pockets, then shook his head. "I don't. My assistant usually handles these things. Can you check again? Maybe it's under a different spelling." Keisha tried every variation she could think of. Jordan with an A, Jordan with an E, first name Michael, Mike, M. Nothing appeared. The anxiety in her chest grew tighter. She knew what came next, and she hated this part of her job. "Mr. Jordan, I've checked thoroughly and I'm not finding any reservation. Let me see what rooms we have available tonight." Her fingers flew across the keys and then her heart sank. The screen showed what she'd feared, all rooms marked as occupied or unavailable. "I'm so sorry, sir, but we're fully booked this evening." Michael's expression shifted slightly, a shadow of confusion crossing his face. "That can't be right. I know you have rooms available." Keisha felt her throat tighten. She didn't understand what he meant, but the system was clear. "Sir, according to our computer, every room is occupied tonight. Perhaps I could help you find accommodations at another." "I don't need another hotel," Michael said, and though his voice remained calm, there was an edge to it now. "I need a room here. I own this hotel." The words seemed to hang in the air. Keisha felt her face grow warm. Behind Michael, other guests had begun to gather, their conversations dying down as they sensed something unusual happening. She'd heard wild claims before, people insisting they were friends with the owner, relatives of celebrities, important business people who deserved special treatment. This felt different somehow, but the rules were the rules. "Sir," she said gently, "I understand your frustration, but I need to be honest with you. The Skyview Grand is owned by a private investment group. If you'd like, I can call my manager, but regarding the rooms, I'm afraid there's truly nothing available tonight." She watched his jaw tighten. For a moment, she thought he might raise his voice, might demand to see someone in charge, might make this difficult in the way some guests did. Instead, he simply pulled out his phone. "I'd like to speak with Marcus Washington," he said quietly. Keisha shook her head. "I'm sorry, I don't know anyone by that name on our staff." "He's the general manager." "No, sir. Our general manager is Damon Wells. I don't know any Marcus Washington." Something changed in Michael's expression then. A flash of realization, perhaps concern. Before either of them could say more, a young boy's voice cut through the lobby. "Mom, Dad, that's Michael Jordan." Keisha's head snapped toward the sound. A boy of about 12 in a Chicago Bulls jersey was pointing at her guest, his eyes wide with excitement, his mouth open in wonder. And in that moment, as she looked back at the man standing before her desk, recognition finally dawned. The face she'd thought was familiar, the name she'd typed without truly hearing it. Michael Jordan. The Michael Jordan. The greatest basketball player who'd ever lived, standing in her lobby, and she just told him there were no rooms available. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. You're really—" "Yes," Michael said simply, "I am." The lobby had gone nearly silent now. People were staring, phones were emerging from pockets and purses, whispers spreading like wildfire. Keisha felt like she couldn't breathe. She'd turned away Michael Jordan, from his own hotel, a hotel he claimed to own. "Mr. Jordan, I am so sorry. I don't follow sports I didn't recognize." Her words tumbled out in a rush. "But the system, it really does show we're fully booked. I don't understand how this happened." The young boy had broken free from his parents and was approaching with wide, hopeful eyes. Michael turned to him with a smile that transformed his face, making him somehow more approachable, more human. "What's your name, son?" "Zach, sir, Zach Miller. Can I have your autograph? I want to be just like you." As Michael signed the basketball Zach thrust toward him, Keisha's mind was racing. Something was wrong here, very wrong. The hotel shouldn't be fully booked. She'd seen the actual occupancy numbers that morning, and they were nowhere near capacity. Yet the system was telling her something different. She picked up the phone with trembling hands. "Let me call Mr. Wells. Please, just give me one moment." As she dialed, she watched Michael talking to the starstruck boy, his patience and kindness evident even in this awkward situation. And Keisha Monroe, who had spent 6 years being invisible, being the reliable one, being the woman who followed every rule and never questioned authority, felt something shift inside her. Whatever was happening at the Sky View Grand Hotel, it wasn't right. And for the first time in her life, she was standing right in the middle of something that would demand she be more than invisible. The phone rang in her ear as rain continued to fall outside. And in the gleaming lobby of Chicago's once great hotel, the first act of a much larger drama had just begun. Part 2: The System Error. Damon Wells arrived at the front desk within minutes, his perfectly tailored suit and practiced smile firmly in place. He was a man in his 40s with salt and pepper hair and the kind of smooth confidence that came from years of hospitality management. But Keisha noticed something she'd never seen before, a tightness around his eyes when he looked at Michael Jordan. "Mr. Jordan," Wells extended his hand. "What an unexpected honor. I'm Damon Wells, the hotel manager. I understand there's been some confusion about your accommodations." Keisha stood to the side, her heart still racing. She watched the exchange carefully, noting how Wells's smile never quite reached his eyes, how his hand trembled just slightly when Michael shook it. "Your desk clerk tells me you're fully booked," Michael said evenly, "but I know that's not accurate." Wells glanced at Keisha, and in that brief look, she saw something that made her stomach turn, a warning, perhaps, or a silent command to stay quiet. She'd seen that look before from him, directed at other staff members who'd asked too many questions or noticed things they shouldn't. "Let me check our system," Wells said, moving behind the desk. His fingers flew across the keyboard and Keisha watched his expression shift through several emotions: surprise, concern, calculation. "Ah, I see the issue now. We had a batch of rooms mistakenly marked as under maintenance. Room 2317, for instance, was just cleared this morning." Keisha blinked in surprise. She'd checked that same system 30 seconds ago. Those rooms had been marked as occupied, not under maintenance. When had it changed? "So you do have rooms available," Michael stated, his voice neutral but his gaze sharp. "We do now," Wells confirmed, producing a key card with practiced efficiency. "Please accept my sincerest apologies for the confusion, Mr. Jordan. It appears we had a system glitch. We'd be honored to upgrade you to one of our deluxe suites, complimentary, of course." "That won't be necessary," Michael said, and something in his tone made both Keisha and Wells pause. "I'll take a standard room. I'm interested in the regular guest experience." Wells's smile faltered for just a moment. "Are you certain? Our suites are much more." "A standard room will be fine." As Wells processed the key card, Keisha's mind was working overtime. A system glitch. She'd been working this computer for 6 years and had never seen rooms spontaneously change their status like that. And the way Wells had looked at her, that warning glance, it reminded her of too many moments in her life when she'd been told to accept things that didn't make sense, to smile and nod and not ask questions. "Room 2323, Wells announced, handing over the key card. "If there's anything at all you need during your stay, Mr. Jordan, please don't hesitate to call me directly." He produced a business card with his personal cell number. After Michael thanked them and headed toward the elevators, Keisha expected Wells to disappear back to his office. Instead, he leaned close to her, his voice dropping to a whisper that only she could hear. "Not a word about this to anyone, Keisha. Understood?" "But sir, I don't understand what happened. The system showed." "I said not a word." His smile never wavered, but his eyes were cold. "You're a good employee. You follow instructions well. Let's keep it that way." He walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing at the desk with her hands shaking and her mind spinning. In the 6 years she'd worked at the Sky View Grand, she'd prided herself on being good at her job. She knew every policy, every procedure. She treated every guest with respect and dignity, whether they were staying in the cheapest room or the presidential suite. She never caused problems, never complained, never questioned authority. But this felt wrong in a way she couldn't ignore. "Excuse me, miss," a gentle voice interrupted her thoughts. It was Zach Miller's mother, a kind-faced woman with concern in her eyes. "Is everything all right?" That seemed like quite an awkward situation. Keisha forced her professional smile back into place. "Just a small mix-up with our reservation system. Nothing to worry about." But as the woman walked away, Keisha found herself staring at her computer screen, at the rooms that had somehow changed their status in the time it took for Wells to arrive at the desk. She pulled up the maintenance log, her fingers trembling slightly as she typed. The rooms in question had been marked as available that morning. Then, at exactly 2:15 in the afternoon, 4 hours before Michael Jordan walked through the door, someone had changed their status to occupied. Someone with manager-level access to the system. Someone like Damon Wells. Keisha's shift ended at 11 that night, but she lingered at the desk, her mind too restless to simply go home. She watched as other staff members moved through the lobby, Carmen from housekeeping pushing her cart toward the service elevator, Bobby the night security guard making his rounds, Rita from room service delivering a late-night order. These were good people, hardworking people. People like her who rode 2 buses to get to work, who skipped lunch to save money, who took on extra shifts when someone called in sick. And suddenly, Keisha understood something she'd been too afraid to see before. The Skyview Grand Hotel had been slowly falling apart for months, the maintenance requests that never got filled, the supply orders that were perpetually delayed, the experienced staff members who kept quitting, replaced by newer employees who didn't ask questions, the budget cuts that made no sense for a hotel that seemed busy enough. She told herself it was just bad management, just the normal struggles of a business trying to stay afloat. But what if it was something more? What if it was deliberate? At 11:15, as she was gathering her things to leave, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Her heart jumped when she read it. "Thank you for trying to help tonight despite a difficult situation. MJ." Michael Jordan had somehow gotten her number and thanked her. Her, Keisha Monroe, who'd never done anything remarkable in her life, who just told a legend he couldn't have a room in his own hotel. The kindness of that simple gesture brought tears to her eyes. She looked around the lobby one more time before heading out into the night. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still slick and shining under the streetlights. As she waited at the bus stop, Keisha made a decision. She'd spent 6 years being invisible, being safe, being the woman who never made waves. But she couldn't do that anymore. Not when something this wrong was happening right in front of her. Whatever was going on at the Sky View Grand Hotel, she was going to figure it out. Even if it meant risking everything she'd worked so hard to build. Even if it meant finally being seen. Because Michael Jordan had been denied a room in his own hotel, and that meant someone was playing a very dangerous game. A game that Keisha Monroe, humble and invisible as she was about to become an unexpected player in. The bus pulled up, its brakes hissing in the quiet night. As Keisha climbed aboard and found a seat by the window, she looked back at the hotel's gleaming facade and whispered a prayer for courage. Tomorrow, everything would change. Part 3: The Hidden Truth. Keisha arrived at work the next morning an hour early, something she'd never done before in 6 years. The lobby was quiet, with only the night shift staff preparing to hand over duties to the day crew. She went straight to the employee break room, where she knew she'd find Gloria Chen, the head of housekeeping, having her morning coffee before the chaos of the day began. Gloria was a small, fierce woman in her late 50s who'd worked at the Sky View Grand for nearly 2 decades. She had a reputation for running her department with military precision and for not tolerating nonsense from anyone, management included. If anyone would know what was really happening at this hotel, it would be Gloria. "You're here early," Gloria observed, looking up from her steaming mug. Her dark eyes were sharp, missing nothing. Trouble sleeping. Keisha poured herself a coffee she didn't really want, just to have something to do with her hands. "Gloria, can I ask you something? And can it stay between us?" The older woman studied her for a long moment, then gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit down, child. You look like you're about to jump out of your skin." The words came tumbling out. The events of the previous night, the way the computer system had shown no rooms available, how those same rooms had mysteriously changed status when Wells arrived, the warning look he'd given her, his whispered threat to stay quiet. As she spoke, Gloria's expression grew darker. "You're finally seeing it," Gloria said softly when Keisha finished. "I wondered when you would. You're a smart woman, Keisha, but you're also someone who wants to believe the best in people. That's not always a good thing in a place like this." "Seeing what?" Keisha leaned forward. "Gloria, what's happening here?" Gloria was quiet for a moment, seeming to weigh how much to say. Then she pulled out a small notebook from her apron pocket, its pages worn from constant handling. 3 months ago, this hotel was sold. New ownership, new management was supposed to come in. But that never happened. Instead, Wells got promoted from assistant manager to general manager. And ever since then, this place has been going to hell in a handbasket. She flipped through the pages, showing Keisha months of documented incidents, maintenance requests that were denied or delayed, supply orders that were cut by more than half, staff members who were fired or driven to quit for no good reason. It's not just bad management, honey. It's sabotage. Someone's deliberately destroying this hotel from the inside. Keisha felt like the ground was shifting beneath her. But why? Who would do that? "That's the question, isn't it?" Gloria closed her notebook. "All I know is that Wells has been taking orders from someone. Phone calls late at night, secret meetings with people who don't sign in at the desk. And I know that good, honest workers like Bobby Turner got fired last month for asking too many questions about missing supplies." "Missing supplies?" Gloria's expression hardened. Cases of liquor from the bar, linens that were ordered but never arrived, electronics that disappeared from storage. Small things at first, then bigger. and every time someone noticed and spoke up, they found themselves out of a job. Keisha thought about her own position, about how carefully she'd built her career here, how much she needed this job. She had her mother's medical bills to help with, rent to pay, a life that depended on the steady paycheck from the Skyview Grand. But she also thought about Michael Jordan's kind eyes when he'd thanked the young boy for his excitement, about the text message he'd sent her last night, about the simple dignity of a man who'd been treated unfairly and had chosen grace over anger. "What do we do?" she asked quietly. Gloria reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "We do what we've always done, Keisha. We take care of our guests the best we can, we watch, we document, and we wait for the right moment. That moment might be now with Mr. Jordan here. He owns this place. I've been hearing rumors about that for weeks. If he's here, maybe he's finally seeing what we've been living with." The break room door opened, and both women fell silent as another employee entered. But something had shifted in Keisha. She wasn't alone in this. Others had seen what she was only now beginning to understand. Others had been fighting this battle long before last night. Her shift began at 8, and Keisha took her place at the front desk with a new awareness. She watched everything now. The way Wells moved through the lobby with false cheer, checking his phone constantly. The way certain staff members avoided making eye contact with others. The maintenance worker who came through the lobby carrying tools but no actual supplies. The pattern of it all was becoming clearer. Around 10 in the morning, Michael Jordan emerged from the elevator. He was dressed casually in jeans and a polo shirt, looking more like a regular guest than a celebrity or a hotel owner. Keisha watched as he surveyed the lobby with the kind of attention most guests never paid, his eyes noting details. A flickering light fixture, a worn patch in the carpet, a painting hanging slightly crooked on the wall. When he approached the desk, Keisha straightened, her heart beating faster. "Good morning, Mr. Jordan. I hope your room was comfortable." His smile was kind, but his eyes were serious. "It was adequate, though I did notice several issues. The air conditioning wasn't working properly, the water pressure in the shower was weak, and the television remote was missing batteries." Keisha felt her face grow hot with embarrassment. These were the kinds of problems that should never exist in a luxury hotel, and she knew it. "I'm so sorry, sir. Let me arrange to have you moved to a better room immediately." "Actually, I'd like to speak with someone about the general condition of the hotel," Michael said. "Is Marcus Washington available?" There was that name again, the man who supposedly didn't exist. "Sir, I've checked our entire directory. There's no one by that name employed here." Something flickered across Michael's face, concern, perhaps frustration. "Can you tell me when the hotel changed ownership? 3 months ago, approximately." Keisha nodded. "Yes, sir, early August." "And Damon Wells became manager at that time?" "Yes, sir. He was promoted from assistant manager." Michael leaned against the desk, his voice lowering so only she could hear. "Keisha, that is your name, right?" When she nodded, he continued. "I need you to trust me. Something isn't right here, and I think you know it too. I saw it in your eyes last night when Wells changed those room statuses. You knew it shouldn't have happened that way." Keisha glanced around the lobby nervously. Cameras were everywhere, and she knew Wells was probably watching from his office. "Mr. Jordan, I don't know what you mean. The system had a glitch, that's all." "Systems don't just glitch at convenient times." His gaze was steady, penetrating. "Listen, I'm not trying to get you in trouble, but I am trying to figure out what's happening at my hotel, and I think you might be able to help." Before Keisha could respond, Wells appeared, seemingly from nowhere, that same practiced smile on his face. "Mr. Jordan, I trust everything was satisfactory last night. I understand from Keisha that there were some minor issues with your room. Please, allow me to move you to our presidential suite immediately." "That won't be necessary," Michael said smoothly. "Though I would like to tour the hotel today, get a sense of the operations. Would that be possible?" Wells's smile tightened just slightly. "Of course, I'd be happy to arrange a comprehensive tour. Shall we say this afternoon, 2 o'clock? Perfect. Michael nodded to both of them and walked away, heading toward the hotel restaurant. As soon as he was out of earshot, Wells turned to Keisha, and the warmth vanished from his expression. What were you two talking about? He was just complaining about his room, sir. I offered to move him, but you arrived before. I don't want you talking to Mr. Jordan unless absolutely necessary, Wells interrupted. If he has any questions or concerns, you direct him immediately to me. Understood? Yes, sir. Keisha kept her eyes down, playing the role of the obedient employee. But inside, something was burning now, a quiet anger that she'd kept suppressed for too long. Wells walked away, pulling out his phone, his voice low and urgent as he made a call. Keisha couldn't hear the words, but she didn't need to. The pieces were coming together, forming a picture that made her sick to her stomach. The Skyview Grand Hotel was being systematically destroyed. And Michael Jordan, the man who owned it, was being kept in the dark by people he should have been able to trust. People like Damon Wells, who smiled to your face while sabotaging everything behind your back. Keisha pulled out her own phone and sent a quick text to Gloria. We need to talk. Lunch break. Usual place. Then she went back to helping guests, answering phones, maintaining the facade of normalcy. But everything had changed. She wasn't invisible anymore, wasn't just following orders, wasn't content to let things happen without fighting back. Keisha Monroe, who'd spent her whole life being small and quiet and safe, was about to take the biggest risk of her life. Because sometimes, doing the right thing mattered more than keeping your job. Sometimes, standing up for truth mattered more than staying invisible. And Michael Jordan, whether he knew it yet or not, had just gained an unlikely ally in his fight to save his hotel. The question now was whether that would be enough. Part 4, The Breaking Point. By lunchtime, Keisha had made copies of every suspicious transaction she could access from the front desk computer. Her hands shook as she printed out reservation records, maintenance requests, and supply orders, all showing a pattern of deliberate mismanagement that went back exactly 3 months. She tucked the papers into her purse, her heart hammering every time someone walked past the desk. She met Gloria in a small coffee shop 2 blocks from the hotel, a place where hotel staff sometimes gathered but management never did. Gloria was already there, sitting in a corner booth with another woman Keisha recognized, Rosa Diaz, the hotel's head chef, whose food was one of the few things that still maintained the Skyview Grand's reputation. Rosa's been dealing with the same thing in the kitchen, Gloria explained as Keisha slid into the booth. Tell her. Rosa was a sturdy woman in her early 40s with tired eyes and calloused hands. They cut my food budget by 60% 3 months ago, 60%, but the menu prices stayed the same. I'm supposed to serve gourmet meals with ingredients from discount suppliers. Her voice was heavy with frustration. I've complained every week, and every week Wells tells me it's temporary, that the new owners are restructuring. But nothing changes except it gets worse. Keisha spread out the papers she'd printed. Look at this. Room occupancy is down 30% from last year, but Wells keeps blocking out rooms in the system, making us turn away guests. Revenue is dropping, but he's telling everyone it's because of the ownership change. Gloria leaned over the papers, her expression grim. He's tanking the hotel on purpose. But why? What does he gain from destroying the business? Maybe he doesn't gain directly, Keisha said slowly, pieces clicking together in her mind. Maybe someone else does. Someone who wants the hotel to fail so they can buy it back cheap. The 3 women looked at each other as the implications sank in. Rosa spoke first. The previous owner. I heard he was bitter about having to sell, some financial trouble he was in. Vernon Pike, Gloria confirmed. He owned this hotel for years. His family built it. I remember when he found out it was being sold, he looked like someone had died, but he put on a brave face, acted like he was happy to be done with it. Keisha felt a chill run down her spine. What if he wasn't done with it? What if he planted Wells here to sabotage it, drive down the value, so he could buy it back? That's fraud, Rosa whispered. That's illegal. And we have no proof, Gloria added grimly. Just observations and suspicions. We need something concrete, something that ties Wells to Pike. Keisha thought about Michael Jordan, about how he'd looked at her that morning, asking for her trust. Mr. Jordan knows something is wrong. I think he's been investigating too. Then maybe it's time we help him, Gloria said firmly. But we have to be smart about it. Wells has eyes everywhere. They talked for another 20 minutes, forming a plan. Rosa would document every supply shortage and budget cut. Gloria would keep her notebook updated and watch for any meetings between Wells and outside visitors. And Keisha would monitor the computer system, tracking every suspicious change or blocked room. When Keisha returned to the hotel for the afternoon shift, she felt different. Stronger somehow, despite the fear still churning in her stomach. She wasn't alone in this anymore. She had allies, women who'd been fighting this battle longer than she had, who were willing to risk everything to do what was right. At exactly 2 o'clock, Michael Jordan appeared in the lobby with Damon Wells, who was conducting the promised tour with exaggerated enthusiasm. Keisha watched them move through the public spaces, Wells pointing out features and amenities, Michael asking questions that seemed casual but were anything but. "And this is our main ballroom," Wells was saying as they passed near the front desk. "We can accommodate up to 400 guests for events." "The carpet looks worn," Michael observed. "Ah, yes, we've had that on our replacement schedule, but with budget considerations from the new ownership." "What budget considerations?" Michael's tone was sharp. "I approved a significant renovation budget 3 months ago." Wells's smile didn't falter, but Keisha saw sweat forming on his upper lip. Perhaps there was some miscommunication with the accounting department. I'll look into it immediately. As they moved past, Michael's eyes met Keisha's briefly. There was something in that look, a question, maybe a request for help. She gave the tiniest nod, hoping he understood. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Keisha handled check-ins and check-outs, answered phones, maintained her professional demeanor. But beneath it all, she was watching, noticing, documenting everything. The way Wells made 3 urgent phone calls after the tour. The maintenance worker who carried out a box of electronics that definitely belonged to the hotel. The guest who complained about being overcharged, only to have Wells personally offer a discount that Keisha later discovered came directly out of the hotel's books as a loss, not a customer service adjustment. Around 5 o'clock, a young boy approached the desk, Zach Miller, the one who'd recognized Michael Jordan the night before. He was carrying his signed basketball like a treasure. "Excuse me, miss," he said politely. "Is Mr. Jordan around? I wanted to thank him again." Keisha smiled despite her tension. "I'm not sure, sweetheart. He might be in his room. Would you like me to call him?" "Could you?" Zach's face lit up. "That would be awesome." As Keisha picked up the phone to ring Michael's room, Wells appeared behind her, his hand covering hers on the receiver. His grip was tight, almost painful. "I'll handle that," he said, his voice pleasant but his eyes cold. "Keisha, don't you have some filing to do in the back office?" It was a dismissal, barely disguised. But Keisha had learned something important over the past 24 hours. She didn't have to accept every command without question anymore. "Actually, sir, I'm scheduled at the front desk until 7. The filing can wait until my admin time tomorrow." Wells's jaw tightened. "I said go to the back office, now." The lobby had gone quiet. Other guests were watching now, sensing the tension. Zach looked confused and a little frightened by the manager's harsh tone, and Keisha faced a choice: obey and stay safe, or stand her ground and face the consequences. She thought about Michael Jordan being denied a room in his own hotel, about Gloria's notebook full of documentation, about Rosa trying to create beautiful meals with terrible ingredients, about all the small injustices that happened when good people stayed silent. "Sir," she said quietly but firmly, "I'm doing my job. If you have concerns about my performance, I'd be happy to discuss them during my scheduled review. But right now, I have a guest who needs assistance." The words hung in the air between them. Wells's face flushed dark red, and for a moment Keisha thought he might explode. But they were in public, surrounded by witnesses, and he was too smart for that. "We'll discuss this later," he said through clenched teeth, then turned on his heel and stalked away. Keisha's hands were trembling as she picked up the phone, but her voice was steady when she called Michael's room. "Mr. Jordan, there's a young fan here in the lobby who'd like to see you if you have a moment." 5 minutes later, Michael emerged from the elevator. Zach rushed over to him, and Michael greeted him with genuine warmth, taking time to talk about basketball, asking about Zach's own playing experience. Keisha watched the interaction, struck by how this famous man treated a starstruck child with such kindness and attention. When Zach's parents came to collect their son, Michael walked over to the desk. "Thank you for calling me," he said to Keisha. Then lower, "I saw what happened with Wells. That took courage." "I just did my job, sir," Keisha replied, but her voice wavered slightly. "No," Michael said firmly. "You did more than that. You stood up for what's right when it would have been easier to back down. That's not just doing a job, that's character." Tears pricked at Keisha's eyes. No one had ever talked to her like that before, acknowledged her that way. She'd spent her whole life trying to be good, trying to be helpful, trying not to cause trouble. And here was someone telling her that standing up for herself mattered. "Mr. Jordan," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was close enough to overhear, "there's something you need to know. About this hotel, about what's been happening. I can't talk here, but—" She scribbled a number on a piece of paper. "This is Gloria Chen. She's head of housekeeping and she's been documenting everything. She can help you understand what's really going on." Michael took the paper, his expression serious. "Thank you, Keisha, I mean that." After he walked away, Keisha felt simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. She'd just taken a stand against her manager. She'd just given information to the hotel owner that could expose corruption. She'd just done something that could cost her everything she'd worked so hard to build. But as she looked around the lobby of the Skyview Grand Hotel, at the worn carpet Wells blamed on budget cuts, at the flickering lights that were never repaired, at the honest, hardworking staff trying to maintain standards despite impossible circumstances, Keisha knew she'd made the right choice. Sometimes the breaking point wasn't when you shattered. Sometimes it was when you finally found the strength to stop bending. And Keisha Monroe, humble and quiet as she was, had just discovered she was stronger than she'd ever imagined. Part 5: The Alliance Forms. That evening, Keisha's phone rang as she was boarding the bus home. The number was unfamiliar, but something told her to answer. "Keisha, this is Marcus Washington." The voice was warm but urgent. "Michael Jordan gave me your number. We need to talk." So Marcus Washington did exist. Did you used to work at the hotel?" "I was supposed to be the general manager," Marcus explained. "Michael hired me 3 months ago when he bought the Skyview Grand. But every time I tried to take my position, I got blocked. Paperwork that mysteriously disappeared, meetings that never happened, access codes that didn't work. I've been trying to figure out what's going on from the outside. Can you meet me tomorrow morning, before your shift?" They arranged to meet at the same coffee shop where Keisha had met with Gloria and Rosa. When Keisha arrived at 7 the next morning, she found not just Marcus but Michael Jordan himself, along with Gloria, Rosa, and 3 other staff members she recognized. Javon Taylor from maintenance, Bobby Turner, who'd been fired last month but had apparently been rehired, and Alina Rodriguez from guest services. The booth in the back corner had been expanded with extra chairs, and the group looked like a war council gathering before a crucial battle. Marcus Washington was a distinguished man in his 50s with kind eyes and an air of competence that made Keisha instantly understand why Michael had chosen him. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "I know this is risky for everyone here, but we need to pool our knowledge if we're going to save this hotel." Over the next hour, each person shared what they knew. Javan described how maintenance requests were systematically ignored, how parts that were ordered never arrived, how he'd been told repeatedly that there was no budget for essential repairs. Bobby explained how he'd been fired for questioning why cases of expensive liquor were being moved out of the hotel at night. Alina talked about the computer system that randomly blocked out rooms, making the hotel appear full when it wasn't. And through it all, Michael listened with the focused intensity of a man processing information and forming a strategy. "It's definitely Vernon Pike behind this," Marcus confirmed. "I've been digging into his finances. He's got serious debt, lost money in bad investments, owes people who don't accept late payments. He needed to sell the Skyview Grand, but he never wanted to. And now he's using his connection with Wells to destroy it so he can buy it back cheap." "How do we stop him?" Rosa asked. "We have observations, but do we have proof?" Gloria pulled out her notebook. "We have 3 months of documentation, patterns, but you're right, it's not concrete evidence of a conspiracy." Michael finally spoke, his voice calm but determined. "Then we need to catch them in the act. Wells has been covering his tracks well, but everyone makes mistakes, especially when they think they're winning." "What are you thinking?" Marcus asked. A slight smile played at Michael's lips, the same look he must have had before making a game-winning shot. "Wells thinks I'm just a celebrity guest who doesn't understand how hotels work. He's trying to hide the problems, fix things just enough that I don't notice how bad it really is. But what if I start demanding more? What if I become the guest from hell?" Keisha felt a flutter of hope in her chest. "You mean, push him until he makes a mistake?" "Exactly. The tour yesterday showed me he's nervous. He's scrambling. If I put enough pressure on, demand improvements, insist on explanations, he'll either have to expose the fraud or try something desperate. And either way, we'll have him." The plan took shape over the next hour. Michael would continue staying at the hotel, documenting everything, making increasingly specific complaints and demands. Marcus would work behind the scenes, tracking financial records and paper trails. The staff members would each watch their areas, document problems, and report anything suspicious. And Keisha would be the front line, the one who saw everything that happened in the lobby, who had access to the reservation system, who could monitor Wells's movements and phone calls. "This is going to be dangerous for all of you," Michael said seriously. "Wells has already shown he's willing to fire people who ask questions. If any of you want to back out, I completely understand." Keisha looked around the table at faces that were tired, worried, but determined. These were people who'd given years of their lives to the Skyview Grand Hotel. People who took pride in their work, who cared about doing things right, who'd watched helplessly as everything they'd built was torn down by corruption and greed. "I'm in," Gloria said firmly. "I've got too much invested in this place to watch it die without a fight." "Me too," Rosa added. One by one, everyone agreed, and when they all looked at Keisha, she found her voice stronger than she'd expected. "I spent 6 years being invisible, doing what I was told, never making waves. I'm done with that. Whatever you need me to do, I'll do it." Michael's smile was warm with respect. "Thank you, all of you. This hotel is just a building, just business, but you've shown me it's more than that. It's people who care about excellence, about integrity, about each other. That's worth fighting for." As the meeting broke up, Michael pulled Keisha aside. "I meant what I said yesterday about character. You didn't have to get involved in this. You could have just kept your head down, collected your paycheck, stayed safe." "Safe isn't always the same as right," Keisha replied quietly. "My grandmother used to say that if you see wrong being done and you do nothing, you're part of the wrong. I can't be part of this anymore. not without fighting back. "Your grandmother sounds like a wise woman." She was. Keisha's throat tightened with emotion. She worked as a housekeeper for 40 years, always told me to take pride in my work no matter what job I had. She'd be ashamed if she knew I'd been letting this happen without speaking up. Michael squeezed her shoulder gently. "She'd be proud of you now." That day at work, Keisha saw everything differently. She wasn't just a front desk clerk anymore. She was a soldier in a righteous battle, gathering intelligence, watching for the enemy's movements. When Wells snapped at her for offering to help a confused guest with directions, she smiled and apologized while mentally adding another mark against him. When she noticed him making hushed phone calls in the corner, she discreetly noted the times. When the computer system randomly blocked out rooms again, she documented exactly when and how it happened. Around 3 o'clock, Michael Jordan approached the desk with a printed list in his hand. His voice was loud enough for other guests to hear. "Keisha, I'd like to file a formal complaint about my room. The television doesn't work properly, the mini fridge is broken, and there's a leak in the bathroom ceiling." Wells appeared immediately, as if he'd been hovering nearby waiting for trouble. "Mr. Jordan, I'm so sorry. Let me move you to our presidential suite right away." "I don't want to be moved," Michael said firmly. "I want my current room fixed. All of these issues should have been addressed before any guest checked in. What kind of hotel is this?" "Sir, I assure you we'll have maintenance address everything immediately," Wells sputtered, his face reddening. "When? I reported these problems yesterday, and nothing has been done." Michael's voice carried across the lobby, and other guests were definitely listening now. "I'm beginning to think the rumors about this place going downhill are true." Wells looked like he might explode. "Mr. Jordan, perhaps we should discuss this in my office." "I'd prefer to discuss it right here. After all, these other guests probably want to know if their rooms are being properly maintained too." It was brilliant, Keisha realized. Michael was creating public pressure, forcing Wells to either fix problems or expose that he couldn't. And judging by the panic in Wells's eyes, he was trapped. "I'll personally oversee the repairs," Wells promised loudly. "Within the hour, Mr. Jordan, you have my word." As Wells hurried away, barking orders into his phone, Michael caught Keisha's eye with the tiniest wink. The game had begun, and Michael Jordan had just made his opening move. Over the next few days, the pressure intensified. Michael complained about the restaurant service, prompting Rosa to reveal to him confidentially about the budget cuts. He questioned the maintenance delays, leading to Javon explaining the missing supplies. He asked about occupancy rates, allowing Keisha to show him the mysteriously blocked rooms. And through it all, Wells became increasingly frantic, working longer hours, making more phone calls, trying desperately to patch holes in a sinking ship. The staff members watched it all with growing hope. They'd been fighting alone for so long, watching their hotel deteriorate, feeling powerless to stop it. But now they had a leader, a plan, and each other. Keisha worked her shifts with new purpose. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was seen, valued, part of something important. And when Wells glared at her or made sharp comments, she held her head high and remembered Michael's words about character. Because character wasn't about being perfect or powerful. It was about standing up when it would be easier to sit down, about speaking up when it would be safer to stay silent, about choosing right over easy, truth over comfort. And Keisha Monroe, along with a small army of honest hotel workers, was about to prove that sometimes the quietest voices could roar the loudest when they finally decided to be heard. Part 6: The Trap Springs. 2 weeks into their operation, Marcus called an emergency meeting. "Vernon Pike is coming to the hotel tomorrow," he announced grimly. "Wells doesn't know that I know, but I intercepted some emails. Pike's bringing potential investors, people he's convinced that the hotel is failing under the new ownership and is ripe for a buyback at a fraction of what Michael paid." Michael's jaw tightened. So tomorrow is the end game. He's going to show them a failing hotel and make his move. Which means, Gloria said slowly, tonight they'll probably try to make things look even worse. Create problems they can point to during the tour. Keisha felt her pulse quicken. What do? We document everything, Marcus replied. And then tomorrow, we let Pike and his investors see exactly what they want to see, until the perfect moment to reveal the truth. That night, several staff members volunteered to stay late, hiding in secure areas where they could watch without being seen. Keisha remained at the front desk, working a double shift that she'd volunteered for, claiming she needed the extra money. Wells had seemed suspicious but couldn't refuse without a good reason. Around 11 o'clock, after most guests had retired to their rooms, Keisha noticed unusual activity. Maintenance workers she didn't recognize were moving through the building, but they weren't fixing things, they were breaking them. A light fixture here, a door lock there. Water damage made to look worse than it was. She quietly texted the group, "It's happening, they're sabotaging on purpose." From her hidden position in the mezzanine, Gloria was recording video on her phone. Javan, working legitimately on a repair in the basement, documented workers deliberately loosening pipes. Rosa, in the kitchen, photographed someone replacing fresh supplies with expired ones. By midnight, they had hours of footage and dozens of photos showing deliberate sabotage. Evidence that couldn't be explained away as simple neglect or budget cuts. The next morning, Vernon Pike arrived at 10 o'clock with 3 well-dressed investors. Keisha recognized him from photos Marcus had shown them, a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and an arrogant bearing. He walked through the lobby like he still owned it, pointing out problems to his companions with barely concealed satisfaction. "You can see the decline already," Pike was saying. "The new owners clearly have no idea how to run a luxury hotel. Look at that water stain on the ceiling, and those carpets completely worn out." Damon Wells greeted them with an oily smile. "Gentlemen, Miss Hughes, welcome to the Skyview Grand. I'm afraid you'll see that your concerns about the property's management are well-founded." Michael was sitting in the lobby reading a newspaper, dressed casually enough that Pike didn't immediately notice him. But Keisha saw the moment recognition hit Pike's face. The shock, the anger, the desperate attempt to maintain composure. "Jordan," Pike said tightly, "what are you doing here?" Michael lowered his newspaper with deliberate slowness. "I could ask you the same thing, Vernon. This is my hotel, after all." The investors looked confused. Wells went pale, and Pike's mask of confidence cracked completely. "Your hotel?" one of the investors, a sharp-eyed woman named Vanessa Hughes, asked. "Mr. Pike told us the property was owned by an investment group called Pinnacle Holdings." "It is," Michael confirmed, standing to his full height. "I am Pinnacle Holdings. Vernon and I had an agreement that my ownership would remain confidential for a year. But I see Vernon has decided to violate that agreement by bringing investors here to tour my property without my permission." Pike's face flushed dark red. "This is a public hotel. I have every right." "You have no rights here," Michael interrupted, his voice carrying the authority of someone used to command. "You sold this hotel to me. You took my money. And then you planted your friend Wells here to destroy it so you could buy it back cheap. That's fraud, Vernon. That's illegal." "That's a serious accusation," Pike blustered. "You have no proof." "Actually," Marcus Washington said, emerging from the elevator with a thick folder of documents, "we have extensive proof. Would you all like to see?" For the next 30 minutes, the group moved to a conference room where Marcus laid out the evidence. Financial records showing budget cuts that were never authorized by Michael. Documentation of maintenance requests that were deliberately ignored. Wells's personal phone records showing dozens of calls to Pike over the past 3 months. And most damning of all, the videos and photos from the previous night showing deliberate sabotage. Vanessa Hughes reviewed the evidence with growing anger. "Mr. Pike, You brought us here under false pretenses. You told us this hotel was failing due to incompetent new ownership, but these documents show the opposite. You've been deliberately destroying the property." These are fabrications," Pike stammered. "Wells, tell them." But Wells was already backing toward the door, clearly seeing how this was going to end. "Mr. Wells," Michael said calmly, "I wouldn't leave if I were you. The police are on their way. They'll want to talk to you about the theft of hotel property, among other things." Javan stepped into the conference room at that moment, wheeling a cart loaded with boxes. These were in Wells's car in the parking garage. Stolen electronics, linens, expensive liquor, all hotel property. Wells made a run for it, but Bobby Turner, the security guard, blocked his path with a grim smile. "Not this time, boss. You fired me for trying to stop this. Now it's my turn." The next few hours were chaos. Police arrived to take statements. Pike and Wells were led away in handcuffs, both shouting about lawyers and false accusations. The investors apologized profusely to Michael and left quickly, wanting no part of the scandal. And through it all, Keisha stood at her post at the front desk, her heart pounding but her hands steady, greeting guests and maintaining normalcy while the hotel's corrupt leadership crumbled around them. When things finally calmed down, Michael gathered the staff who'd helped expose the fraud. They met in the same empty suite they'd used for their first war council, but this time the mood was different, exhausted but triumphant. "I can't thank you enough," Michael said, looking at each person in turn. "You risked your jobs, your security, everything to do what was right. That takes courage." "We couldn't have done it without you, Mr. Jordan," Gloria said firmly. "You gave us hope that things could change." "No," Michael corrected her. "You'd been fighting this battle long before I showed up. I just gave you an opportunity to win it." Rosa wiped tears from her eyes. "What happens now to the hotel, to us?" "Marcus is officially taking over as general manager," Michael announced. "And we're implementing the full renovation plan that was supposed to happen 3 months ago. Every single thing that Vernon and Wells destroyed, we're going to rebuild bigger and better." "And your jobs are secure," Marcus added. "In fact, we're going to need your expertise to train the new staff we'll be hearing. People who share your commitment to excellence and integrity." Keisha felt emotions overwhelming her, relief, joy, disbelief that this was really happening. "Mr. Jordan, I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't seem like enough." Michael smiled at her warmly. "Keisha, you're the one who made this possible. You stood up when it would have been easier to stay silent. You connected me with people who could help. You documented evidence when you could have just looked the other way. This hotel is going to survive and thrive because of people like you." Later that evening, after her shift finally ended, Keisha rode the bus home in a daze. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Come to the hotel at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Wear something nice. There's someone I want you to meet." The next morning, Keisha arrived to find the lobby bustling with activity. Reporters, cameras, photographers. Michael stood at the center of it all, and when he saw her, he waved her over. "Ladies and gentlemen," he addressed the assembled press, "I want to introduce you to some real heroes. These are the staff members of the Skyview Grand Hotel who refused to let corruption win, who fought to save this historic Chicago landmark, and who proved that integrity and courage matter more than position or power." Cameras flashed as Michael stood beside Keisha, Gloria, Rosa, Javan, Bobby, and the others. He told the story of being denied a room in his own hotel, of discovering the fraud, and of the brave workers who'd helped expose it. Keisha had never liked being the center of attention, had spent her whole life trying to be invisible. But standing there beside these people she'd come to admire and respect, with Michael Jordan's arm around her shoulders and cameras capturing this moment, she realized something profound. Being seen wasn't scary when you were being seen for doing something right. Being heard wasn't dangerous when you were speaking truth. Being brave wasn't about never feeling fear. It was about feeling the fear and standing up anyway. The press conference ended, and as the reporters filed out, Michael pulled Keisha aside. "I have something for you." He handed her an envelope. Inside was a promotion letter, front desk manager, with a substantial salary increase and full benefits. Keisha's hands trembled as she read it. "Mr. Jordan, I can't accept this. I'm not qualified." "You're exactly qualified," Michael interrupted. "You have something no training can teach: character. The hotel needs people like you in leadership positions, people who will do the right thing even when it's hard." Tears streamed down Keisha's face. Thank you so much." "No," Michael said softly. "Thank you for reminding me why I wanted to own this hotel in the first place. Not for profit or prestige, but to create a place where excellence and integrity matter, where good people can do good work and be valued for it." As Keisha left the hotel that day, walking past the Skyview Grand's gleaming facade toward the bus stop, she felt different, lighter somehow, stronger. For years, she'd believed that being small and quiet and invisible was the safest way to live. That drawing attention meant inviting trouble. That speaking up meant risking everything. But she'd learned something precious over these past weeks. Sometimes staying safe meant losing yourself. Sometimes staying silent meant losing your soul. And sometimes the most dangerous thing you could do was nothing at all. Keisha Monroe had found her voice. And in finding it, she'd helped save not just a hotel, but a little piece of what made the world worth believing in. The idea that truth could win, that justice could prevail, and that ordinary people doing extraordinary things could change everything. Part 7: The Reckoning. 3 months after Vernon Pike and Damon Wells were arrested, Keisha stood in her new office, a small but comfortable space just off the main lobby with a window overlooking Michigan Avenue. She was reviewing the week's staffing schedule when her phone buzzed with a message from Michael Jordan. "Conference room in 20 minutes. Something you need to see." The Skyview Grand had been transformed in those 3 months. Fresh paint gleamed on every wall. New carpets cushioned every floor. The kitchen had state-of-the-art equipment that made Rosa cry with joy. The maintenance department finally had the supplies and budget they needed. And most importantly, the staff moved through the halls with pride and purpose again. But there was still unfinished business. When Keisha entered the conference room, she found Michael, Marcus, and a woman she didn't recognize, a lawyer, judging by her crisp suit and leather briefcase. "Keisha, this is Jennifer Martinez," Michael introduced them. "She's been handling the legal case against Vernon and Wells. I thought you should hear what she has to say." Jennifer opened her briefcase and pulled out documents. Both men took plea deals this morning. Vernon Pike pleaded guilty to fraud, conspiracy, and theft. He'll serve 3 years in federal prison and pay full restitution to the hotel. Wells got 2 years and forfeiture of all assets. Keisha sank into a chair, processing this news. "So it's really over?" "Not quite," Jennifer continued. "During the investigation, we discovered something interesting. Vernon's scheme went deeper than we thought. He had been planning this for years, deliberately mismanaging the hotel while he still owned it, creating the financial problems that forced him to sell. Then he used his plant, Wells, to make things worse so he could buy it back cheap." "But why?" Keisha asked. "Why destroy something his own family built?" Michael spoke up, his voice thoughtful. "Pride. Vernon and I have history going back to high school basketball. I was always better than him, and he never forgave me for it. When he found out I was interested in buying the hotel, it became about more than business. It became about beating me, proving he was smarter, getting revenge for old wounds." "That's pathetic," Keisha said quietly. "He destroyed all those lives, hurt all those people, just because of some high school rivalry." "Pride makes people do terrible things," Marcus observed. "But here's the good news. The investigation also revealed that Vernon had been embezzling from the hotel for years. His uncle, who originally built the Skyview Grand, had 3 other partners. Their descendants are still alive, and they had no idea their inheritance had been stolen. Jennifer pulled out more papers. We tracked down 12 people who should have been receiving profit shares from this hotel for the past 30 years. Vernon had falsified documents to cut them out. Mr. Jordan has agreed to honor those original partnership agreements. Keisha looked at Michael in amazement. You're giving away part of your hotel. Michael shrugged. It was never entirely mine to keep. Those families were cheated. Now they'll finally get what's rightfully theirs. Besides, he smiled, it feels good to do the right thing. Over the next few weeks, Keisha watched as the Skyview Grand became not just a hotel but a community. The descendants of the original partners, a mix of teachers, nurses, small business owners, and working families, came to visit their restored inheritance. Many had stories of grandparents or great-grandparents who'd worked on building the original hotel in the 1960s, who'd taken pride in creating something beautiful for Chicago. One elderly woman named Dorothy Freeman particularly touched Keisha's heart. She'd been 5 years old when her grandfather, one of the original partners, had died suddenly. Vernon's father had taken advantage of her widowed grandmother's grief, convincing her to sign away her shares for a pittance. I didn't even know we were supposed to own part of this place, Dorothy said, tears streaming down her face as she stood in the restored lobby. My grandmother worked as a maid until she was 75, never knowing she should have been an owner. Oh, if only she could see this now. Michael overheard this and approached Dorothy. Mrs. Freeman, I have a proposal for you. We're planning to create a permanent historical display here in the lobby, honoring the original builders and partners of the Skyview Grand. Would you allow us to include your grandfather's story? Dorothy clasped his hands. Oh, yes, please. Let people know that James Freeman helped build something that lasted, that he mattered. The historical display, when completed, became one of the hotel's most distinctive features. Bronze plaques and elegant photo displays told the story of the Skyview Grand's founding, including the original partners who'd pooled their resources to create something greater than any of them could have built alone. And in a small but significant gesture, Room 2323, the room that started it all, the room where Michael Jordan should have stayed, was designated as a permanent memorial room. It was renovated to museum quality, decorated with photographs and artifacts from the hotel's history, and offered free of charge to descendants of the original partners whenever they wanted to visit. Keisha often gave tours to school groups, telling the story of the hotel's rise, fall, and redemption. She talked about how ordinary people, front desk clerks, housekeepers, chefs, maintenance workers, had stood up against corruption and won. The students listened with wide eyes, especially the young girls who saw themselves in Keisha's story. You're a hero, one teenager told her after a tour. You weren't afraid of anything. Keisha shook her head. No, honey, I was terrified. Every single day I was scared of losing my job, of making things worse, of getting hurt. But I did it anyway because fear isn't a good enough reason to let bad things happen. 6 months after the arrests, the Skyview Grand Hotel held a grand reopening gala. The ballroom sparkled with crystal and candlelight. Chicago's elite mixed with the hotel staff, who'd been given places of honor for the evening. News cameras recorded the event, telling the story of the hotel that had been saved by its own workers. Keisha wore a dress she'd bought specifically for the occasion. Nothing fancy, just a simple navy blue dress that made her feel elegant and confident. She stood with Gloria, Rosa, Javon, Bobby, and the others who'd fought alongside her, watching as Michael gave a speech to the assembled crowd. This hotel was built on dreams, Michael said, his voice carrying through the room. Dreams of people who believed they could create something beautiful and lasting. For a while, those dreams were nearly destroyed by greed and corruption. But they survived because of people who refused to let wrong win, people who stood up when it would have been easier to sit down, who spoke truth when it would have been safer to stay silent. He gestured to where Keisha and the others stood. These are the real heroes of the Skyview Grand, not because they had power or fame or resources, but because they had something more important: integrity. They remind us that the battle between right and wrong isn't fought by superheroes or celebrities. It's fought by ordinary people making extraordinary choices in their everyday lives. The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, and Keisha felt a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the attention and everything to do with knowing, deep in her soul, that she'd done the right thing. Later that evening, as the party was winding down, Keisha found herself alone in the lobby for a moment, looking at the historical display. She studied the photograph of James Freeman, Dorothy's grandfather, standing proudly in his work clothes in front of the newly completed hotel in 1964. His face showed dignity and hope, the face of a man who'd built something that mattered. "He'd be proud, you know," Michael's voice came from behind her, "of what you helped preserve." Keisha turned to find him standing there, still in his tuxedo from the gala. "I was just thinking about dreams," she said. "How they can be stolen, but also how they can be reclaimed. Mr. Freeman dreamed of building something lasting. Vernon tried to steal that dream, to erase it, but we got it back." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "You know what I learned from all this? Being denied that room that first night, it was the best thing that could have happened. If they'd recognized me, if they'd given me VIP treatment, I might never have seen the truth. Sometimes we need to be knocked down to see what's really going on around us." "And sometimes," Keisha added softly, "we need someone to believe in us before we can believe in ourselves. You did that for all of us, Mr. Jordan. You saw us when we felt invisible. You valued us when we felt worthless." "No," Michael said firmly. "You already had that value. I just helped you see it in yourselves." They stood together in comfortable silence, two people from completely different worlds who'd been brought together by circumstance and united by a common cause. Around them, the Skyview Grand Hotel hummed with life and purpose, its marble floors gleaming, its chandeliers sparkling, its future finally secure. Vernon Pike was in prison, paying for his crimes. Damon Wells had lost everything in his pursuit of corrupt gain, but more importantly, justice had prevailed. Truth had won, and ordinary people who dared to be extraordinary had changed the course of history, at least the history of one historic Chicago hotel. As the evening ended and staff began closing down the ballroom, Keisha walked through the lobby one last time before heading home. She paused at the display case that now held a copy of the very first hotel registry from 1964, open to show the first guests who'd ever checked in. And she thought about her own name, which would one day appear in the hotel's history books, not as a guest, but as someone who'd helped save this place. Keisha Monroe, front desk manager, who'd stood up when standing up was hard, who'd found her voice when silence was safer, who'd helped prove that integrity mattered more than power. Her grandmother would have been proud. More importantly, Keisha was proud of herself. And that, she realized, was the greatest victory of all. Part 8, Full Circle. 1 year after the grand reopening, Keisha Monroe arrived at work to find young Zach Miller waiting in the lobby with his parents. The boy was taller now, his face showing the first hints of teenage awkwardness, but his basketball jersey, signed by Michael Jordan, was still his most prized possession. "Ms. Monroe," Zach called out when he saw her, "guess what? I made the school team, starting point guard." Keisha smiled warmly. "That's wonderful, Zach. Your hard work paid off." "And guess what else?" The boy could barely contain his excitement. "Mr. Jordan invited us to stay here for the weekend. He's taking me to a Bulls practice tomorrow." Tom and Lisa Miller looked slightly overwhelmed by their good fortune. "We still can't believe everything that happened," Lisa said to Keisha. "That day when Zach recognized Mr. Jordan, when we saw you stand up to your manager, it changed how we thought about a lot of things, about speaking up when we see something wrong, about having courage." "It changed all of us," Keisha replied softly. The Skyview Grand Hotel had indeed been transformed. The building itself was beautiful again, every system upgraded, every room perfect, every public space gleaming. But more than that, the spirit of the place had changed. The staff moved with purpose and pride. Guests noticed the difference, writing reviews that praised not just the physical amenities, but the genuine warmth and professionalism of every employee. Revenue was up 40% from the previous year. Occupancy rates were the highest in the hotel's history. Awards and recognition poured in from industry organizations. But for Keisha, the real measure of success was simpler. She could look any staff member in the eye and see dignity reflected back at her. No one felt invisible anymore. No one felt unvalued. Later that morning, Keisha attended the weekly management meeting in the conference room. Marcus Washington presided, with department heads reporting on their areas. Rosa discussed plans for a new seasonal menu. Javan outlined the maintenance schedule. Gloria presented staffing numbers that showed the lowest turnover rate the hotel had experienced in a decade. When it was Keisha's turn, she stood and addressed the group. I want to talk about something beyond numbers and operations. I want to talk about what this hotel represents now. She pulled out a letter she'd received that week. This is from a young woman who worked here 5 years ago. She left because the environment was toxic, because good work wasn't recognized, because speaking up meant getting fired. She wrote to say she heard about what happened, about how we stood up and changed things. And she wants to know if we're hearing because she'd like to come back, to be part of something that stands for doing things right. Keisha looked around the table at faces she'd come to respect and trust. That's what we've built here. Not just a successful hotel, but a place where integrity matters, where people can do good work and be valued for it, where standing up for what's right is celebrated instead of punished. That's our real legacy. The room was quiet for a moment, then Marcus started clapping. Others joined in, and Keisha felt her eyes misting with emotion. After the meeting, Michael Jordan himself arrived at the hotel. He didn't own it alone anymore. The restored partnership agreements meant that 12 families now shared ownership, with Michael holding the largest share and Marcus running day-to-day operations. But Michael still visited regularly, checking on progress and connecting with staff. He found Keisha in the lobby, overseeing the afternoon check-in rush. "Got a minute?" he asked. They walked to the small cafe off the lobby, ordering coffee and settling into a quiet corner booth. Michael pulled out a folder of papers. "I wanted to show you something. Remember Dorothy Freeman, the elderly woman whose grandfather was one of the original partners?" Keisha nodded. Of course, she was so moved by the historical display. "Well, she passed away last month, peacefully, surrounded by family." Michael's voice was gentle. "But before she died, she made arrangements to endow a scholarship fund for young people from working-class families who want careers in hospitality. Full ride to college, plus a guaranteed job here at the Skyview Grand after graduation." He handed Keisha a letter. "She specifically requested that you oversee the scholarship program. She said you embodied everything she'd hoped the hotel would stand for: ordinary people doing extraordinary things, giving back, lifting others up." Keisha read the letter through tears. Dorothy had written about her grandfather James, about how he'd never got to see his dream fully realized, but how she hoped this scholarship would help other dreamers build their own legacies. "I'd be honored," Keisha whispered, "so deeply honored." "There's more," Michael continued. "The other partner families want to contribute too. We're creating a comprehensive program: scholarships, training, mentorship. We're going to invest in people the way Vernon never did. Build the next generation of hospitality professionals who understand that success isn't just about profit, it's about integrity." That afternoon, Keisha walked through the hotel with new eyes. She saw Roberto, the young man from a tough neighborhood who'd started in the mailroom and was now training to be a concierge. She saw Maya, a single mother who'd come to them from a homeless shelter and was now one of their best housekeepers. saving money to go to nursing school. She saw countless stories of people getting second chances, building better lives, finding dignity and purpose. The Skyview Grand wasn't just a hotel anymore. It was proof that redemption was possible, that systems could change, that standing up to corruption and greed could actually work. Around 5 o'clock, Keisha got a call from building security. "Ms. Monroe, there's someone here asking to see you. Says his name is Vernon Pike." Keisha's blood ran cold. Pike was out of prison already. Does he seem dangerous? "No, ma'am, he seems small, broken. He says he just wants to talk to you for 5 minutes, but we won't let him in if you don't want to see him." Keisha thought about it. Part of her wanted to refuse, to never see the man who'd caused so much pain. But another part, the part that had learned about courage and truth over this past year, knew that facing him might bring closure. Let him in, but stay close. Vernon Pike looked nothing like the arrogant man she'd seen on security footage from a year ago. He'd aged decades, it seemed, thinner, grayer, his expensive suit replaced by worn casual clothes. He approached her desk hesitantly, like a man who knew he had no right to be there. "Ms. Monroe," he said quietly, "thank you for seeing me. I know I don't deserve it." Keisha studied him coolly. "You have 5 minutes. What do you want?" "To apologize," Vernon's voice cracked. "To you, to everyone who worked here, to Michael Jordan. I destroyed something beautiful because of pride and bitterness. I hurt good people who'd done nothing to me, and I've spent every day of the last year understanding what I threw away." "Why?" Keisha asked. "Why did you do it? What did we ever do to you?" Vernon sank into a chair uninvited, looking utterly defeated. "Nothing. That's the thing, it had nothing to do with any of you. It was about me and Michael, about rivalry that went back 40 years, about me being second best and never getting over it. I let that poison my whole life, and in trying to hurt him, I hurt everyone else instead." "You almost destroyed this hotel," Keisha said firmly. "You almost destroyed people's lives. My life, Gloria's life, Rosa's, Javon's, Bobby's. We were just trying to do our jobs, and you made us collateral damage in your petty revenge." "I know." Vernon looked up at her with eyes full of genuine remorse. "I know, and I'm sorry. That doesn't fix anything, doesn't undo the damage, but I needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I was, and I'm ashamed." They sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Keisha spoke. "I used to be like you in a way, not cruel or corrupt, but trapped by fear. Afraid to speak up, afraid to be seen, afraid to take risks. I thought staying small and invisible was the safest way to live. But then I learned something. Staying safe isn't the same as being alive." Vernon nodded slowly. "I spent my whole life being afraid too. Afraid of being second best. Afraid of being forgotten. Afraid that without this hotel, without beating Michael, I'd be nobody. And in trying to hold on to something that was never really mine, I lost everything that mattered." "So what now?" Keisha asked. "What are you going to do with your second chance?" Vernon stood, preparing to leave. "I got a job at a small motel out by the airport. Nothing glamorous, just cleaning rooms and doing maintenance. But it's honest work, and I'm trying to do it well. Trying to be someone my uncle would have been proud of instead of the person I became." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Ms. Monroe, thank you for standing up when it mattered. Thank you for being brave when I was choosing to be cruel. This hotel survived because of people like you. I hope you know that." After Vernon left, Keisha sat at her desk for a long time, processing what had just happened. She felt no satisfaction in his fall, no triumph in his humiliation. Just a profound sadness for all the wasted years, all the damage done by pride and fear and bitterness. But she also felt something else, gratitude. Gratitude that she'd learned a different path, that she'd discovered courage when she needed it most, that she'd been part of something that proved good could triumph over wrong when people were willing to fight for it. That evening, as her shift ended, Keisha walked through the hotel one last time. She stopped at the historical display, reading the plaques about the original partners, looking at photographs of the hotel's first days. Then she looked at the newer additions, photos from the grand reopening, pictures of the staff who'd stood together, newspaper articles about the corruption scandal and the redemption that followed. And there, in a place of honor, was a photograph of her, Keisha Monroe, standing beside Michael Jordan, Gloria Chen, Rosa Diaz, and the others who'd fought to save the Skyview Grand. The caption read, "The courage to stand up for what's right transforms ordinary people into heroes." She'd spent so much of her life trying to be invisible. Now her face was displayed for everyone to see, representing something bigger than herself, proof that ordinary people could make extraordinary differences, that speaking up mattered, that integrity had power, that one person's courage could inspire others to be brave. Keisha pulled out her phone and called her mother. "Hey, Mama, I just wanted to tell you something. Remember how you always said Grandma would be proud of me? Well, I think I'm finally proud of me too." As she rode the bus home that night, Keisha looked out at Chicago's glittering skyline. The Skyview Grand was just one building among thousands. But what had happened there, what she and so many others had fought for and won, represented something universal and timeless. The battle between right and wrong, between integrity and corruption, between courage and fear, between staying silent and speaking up. And in that one hotel, in 1 year, in the lives of dozens of ordinary working people, that battle had been won. Not because they had power or resources or fame, but because they had something more valuable, the willingness to stand up when standing up was hard, the courage to do what was right even when it cost them something, the faith that truth and justice were worth fighting for. Michael Jordan had been denied a room in his own hotel, and from that moment of injustice had come a story of redemption that would be told for generations. How a basketball legend and a humble front desk clerk, along with cooks and housekeepers and maintenance workers and security guards, had stood together against corruption and won. The Skyview Grand Hotel stood tall once again, its windows shining like beacons across Chicago, but more importantly, it stood for something, for second chances, for fighting back against wrong, for the truth that ordinary people, when they find their courage, can change the world. And Keisha Monroe, no longer invisible, no longer afraid, no longer silent, was proof that the most powerful force in the world wasn't wealth or fame or status. It was character, it was integrity, it was the simple but profound choice to do what was right, even when doing right was hard. That was the legacy of the Skyview Grand. And that was a legacy worth fighting for. And if you were in their place, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. Your opinion matters. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and become a part of our Unbroken Gray Stories community. Where are you watching from?